Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! A soft clatter cut through the rhythmic bass lines reverberating from the speakers, drawing attention to the modest poker table, where the rhythmic clacking of poker chips had been interrupted by its polyrhythmic partner, the tumbling of dice across mahogany. Inside an apartment fitting only the bare essentials of nightlife, there were 5 players seated around the table, within which the humdrum melody of a forced conviviality persisted and permeated the air. Marcus's success at the table was crowned by a cataclysm of dice, a fateful combination of dots that gave way to his all-too-confident grin emerging beneath his dusty stubble. An unflappable glare of victory fixated on his opponents, eager to taunt and capitalize on his newfound fortune.
My lucky streak continues, gents. It seems like Lady Fortune has a soft spot for the brave.
Marcus thrust his chest out proudly, his posture growing more virile with each ensuing victory. There was a clearing of throats at the corner of the table as Sean Bailey spoke with restraint, his words punched with annoyance.
I'll be honest, mate. I've had better nights. The dice are just not on my side,
he admitted, his casual British accent mixed in with the crowd. He supplicated with his body posture lowered towards Marcus.
Can't squeeze blood from a stone.
Marcus leaned back in his chair, the wooden legs creaking in protest.
Then maybe we need to make things more interesting.
His eyes glinted with mischief.
How about a wager?
The other guys perked up immediately. Justin, Reed, and Damon all exchanged knowing looks. When Marcus suggested a wager, it usually meant trouble. Entertaining trouble, but trouble nonetheless.
What kind of wager?
Sean asked cautiously. Marcus's smile widened.
Halloween party at Westlake House next weekend, right? I bet you...
He pointed directly at Sean.
Can't attend as a woman without anyone figuring out who you really are.
The room erupted in laughter and catcalls.
No way! Absolutely not!
Sean protested, shaking his head firmly.
I'm 6'1" with shoulders like a linebacker. Nobody's buying that.
Exactly why it's a good bet, Reed chimed in, his voice tinged with challenge.
What's the matter? Afraid you'll like it too much?
Justin snickered.
Or afraid you'll be an ugly woman?
Sean felt color rising to his cheeks.
I'm not afraid of anything. It's just ridiculous. Then prove it, Marcus countered. If you pull it off, stay the whole night without anyone calling you out. We each put in $50. That's $200 in your pocket. And if I get caught? Sean asked. Then you're on beer duty for the rest of the semester, Marcus said. Every game night, every hangout, you're the designated buyer.
Sean did the mental math quickly. That would easily cost him 3 times what he could win. The guys were still watching him expectantly, challenging grins on their faces. The rational part of his brain screamed this was a terrible idea, but pride was a powerful motivator.
Fine,
he finally said, slamming his palm on the table.
You're all about to lose $200.
The room erupted in cheers and laughter. Sean tried to maintain his confident expression, but inside, panic was already setting in. What had he just agreed to? 3 days later, Sean stood outside his sister Maddie's apartment, questioning every life choice that had led to this moment. He raised his hand to knock, then hesitated. There was still time to back out, to endure the ridicule of his friends rather than go through with this ridiculous plan. Then he pictured Marcus's smug face and his knuckles rapped against the door before he could think better of it. Maddie swung the door open, coffee mug in hand. Her eyebrows shot up at the sight of her brother. "This is a surprise. What's wrong?" she asked, stepping aside to let him in.
"Why would anything be wrong?"
Sean asked, too quickly. Maddie closed the door and crossed her arms. "Because you never visit me unless you need something. Plus, you look like you're about to throw up." Sean sank onto her couch, burying his face in his hands.
"I did something stupid."
"Again? I'm shocked," she deadpanned, sitting opposite him. "What was it this time?"
"I made a bet with the guys."
He explained the wager, watching his sister's expression shift from amusement to disbelief. When he finished, Maddie stared at him silently for a long moment. Then she burst out laughing. Not just a chuckle, but full-body, tears-in-eyes laughter that had her doubling over.
"Are you done?"
Sean asked when her laughter finally subsided. "I'm sorry," she gasped, wiping her eyes.
"But you have to admit, this is peak you, making the most ridiculous bet possible."
"Can you help me or not?" Maddie studied him thoughtfully. "I could. The question is, should I?"
"Maddie, please.
"It's $200. And your dignity," she added. "My dignity is already on the line.
If I back out now, they'll never let me live it down."
Maddie sipped her coffee, considering. "You know, this could actually be enlightening for you. Maybe spend an evening experiencing what women deal with on a daily basis."
"I just need to survive one party without getting caught,"
Sean clarified.
"I'm not looking for a social experiment."
"Fine."
Maddie stood up. "I'll help you win your stupid bet. But you owe me. Big time."
Relief washed over Sean. "Thank you. Thank you. I'll do whatever you want." "You say that now," Maddie warned, a dangerous gleam in her eye. "Let's see how you feel after I'm done with you." The day of the Halloween party arrived faster than Sean anticipated. His stomach churned with anxiety as he knocked on Maddie's door, a backpack containing his party clothes slung over one shoulder. He'd spent the past week enduring taunts and teasing from his friends, each of them certain he would fail spectacularly. "Come in," Maddie called. "We've got work to do." Sean stepped inside to find what looked like a beauty salon exploded in his sister's living room. Makeup was arranged on every surface, and clothing hung from various doorways. "What is all this?" he asked, taking in the intimidating array. "These," Maddie explained, gesturing to the cosmetics, "are the tools that will save you from beer duty for the semester." Sean swallowed hard. "I thought I'd just throw on a dress and a wig." Maddie laughed. "Oh, sweet, naive brother. If you want to actually pull this off, we need to transform you. Not just slap on some lipstick and call it a day."
"Fine,"
Sean sighed, dropping his backpack. "Where do we start?" "First, we prepare the canvas." She pointed to her bathroom. "I laid out everything you need to shave, properly shave. Face, chest, arms, legs, everything." Sean balked. "Everything? That wasn't part of the deal." "Do you want to win or not? Because I guarantee some drunk guy is going to want to feel your legs, and stubble is a dead giveaway." Sean wanted to argue, but knew she was right. With a defeated sigh, he trudged to the bathroom.
"The things I do for $200.
An hour and several nicks later, Sean emerged from the bathroom feeling strangely vulnerable. His skin tingled everywhere, and he couldn't stop running his hands over his now smooth face.
"This feels weird," he complained.
"Welcome to the world of societal beauty expectations," Maddie replied cheerfully. Now sit. We're starting with makeup. Sean perched on the stool she'd placed in front of a large mirror.
Not too much, right? I don't want to look like a clown. Trust me, for what we're trying to accomplish, subtle is key.
What followed was an hour of Maddie poking, prodding, and painting his face. She explained each step, foundation to even out his skin tone, contouring to soften his jawline and narrow his nose, highlighting to bring forward certain features. Sean watched with growing fascination as his face slowly transformed under her skilled hands.
You're actually pretty good at this, he admitted.
I considered going to cosmetology school before settling on business, she replied, carefully applying mascara to his lashes. Now, close your eyes and don't move. When she finally allowed him to look in the mirror again, Sean barely recognized himself. His features were softer somehow, more delicate. His eyes looked larger, framed by dark lashes, and his lips appeared fuller with a subtle, rosy tint.
That's impressive,
he admitted reluctantly. We've barely started, Maddie said, disappearing into her bedroom. She returned with several items draped over her arm. Let's talk about your body shape. The next phase involved what Maddie called creating the illusion. Specialty undergarments to create curves where there were none, and silicone inserts that she tactfully referred to as enhancers. Sean drew the line at the waist cincher she produced. No way. I need to breathe. Fine, but you'll have to be extra careful about your posture then. After what felt like hours of preparation, Maddie finally held up the dress she'd chosen. A flowing red number with long sleeves and a skirt that would fall to just above his knees. This will hide your broad shoulders and give the illusion of hips, she explained. Plus, the color will distract from any masculine features we couldn't completely disguise. Sean took the garment gingerly. How do I get into this? Very carefully, Maddie instructed. And for goodness sake, don't smudge your makeup. Wrestling with the dress proved to be yet another challenge, but eventually, Sean stood fully clothed, tugging awkwardly at the hemline. The fabric felt strange against his newly smooth skin. Stop fidgeting, Maddie scolded. Women's clothes aren't going to fall off. You don't need to keep checking them.
Easy for you to say,
he grumbled. You're used to this. Last touches, Maddie announced, producing a long, brown-haired wig. I thought about blonde, but brown will complement your skin tone better and look more natural. She carefully positioned the wig, adjusting it until she was satisfied. A few spritzes of perfume later. Not too much, it's a hint, not an announcement. And she stepped back to assess her work. Turn around, she instructed, twirling her finger. Sean awkwardly pivoted, nearly toppling in the low heels she'd insisted would be easier to manage than flats. Well? He asked when she remained silent. Maddie tilted her head. I have to say, I'm impressed with myself. You actually look convincing. She guided him to the full-length mirror on her closet door, and Sean stared at his reflection in disbelief. The person looking back was undeniably feminine, not in an over-the-top way, but in a subtle, believable manner that was somehow more shocking. Holy shit, he whispered. Language, young lady, Maddie teased. Now, we need to work on your voice. Lower volume, higher pitch, and for God's sake, watch how you walk. Small steps, hips, not shoulders. The next hour was spent on what Maddie called deportment lessons, how to sit, stand, walk, and gesture like a woman. Sean's initial awkwardness gradually gave way to a cautious confidence as he practiced moving around the apartment.
What about my name? He suddenly asked.
I can't be Sean. How about Annie?
Maddie suggested. It's simple, easy to remember, and you'll respond to it since it sounds a bit like Sean. Annie, he repeated, testing the name. I guess that works. Maddie checked her watch.
Party starts in 30 minutes. One last thing. Your backstory. Keep it simple. You're Annie, my friend from my economics class. You're single, you work part-time at a bookstore, and you're originally from Portland. The less specific, the better. Sean, now Annie, nodded, mentally rehearsing the details. Ready? Maddie asked. No, he wasn't ready. This was insane, but backing out now wasn't an option.
As I'll ever be,
he replied, gathering his courage. The ride to Westlake House was nerve-wracking. With each passing block, Sean's anxiety increased. What if someone recognized him immediately? What if he made some obvious mistake? What if he lost the bet within minutes of arriving? Stop overthinking, Maddie advised as she parked. The more natural you act, the less likely anyone is to question you.
Easy for you to say,
Sean muttered, carefully exiting the car as she'd taught him.
You're not pretending to be someone else.
Aren't we all in some way? Maddie replied cryptically. Come on, Annie. Your public awaits. Westlake House loomed before them, music already pulsing from within. Halloween decorations adorned the front yard, and costumed partygoers streamed through the front door. Sean hesitated at the bottom of the porch steps.
I don't know if I can do this, he admitted.
Maddie squeezed his arm reassuringly. You can. And honestly, no one's going to be looking that closely. People see what they expect to see. Taking a deep breath, Sean followed his sister up the steps and into the house. The interior was packed with bodies, the air thick with the scent of alcohol and perfume. Halloween decorations hung from every available surface, and monster-themed music blasted from speakers in the corner. Sean immediately spotted Marcus, Reed, Justin, and Damon near the makeshift bar, already scanning the room for his arrival. His first instinct was to avoid them entirely, but Maddie had other ideas. Best defense is a good offense, she whispered, steering him directly toward the group. Let's get the hardest part over with. Are you crazy? Sean hissed, but it was too late. They were already approaching. Hey guys, Maddie greeted casually. Have you met my friend Annie? Annie, these are some friends of my brother's. Sean felt his heart pounding as 5 pairs of eyes turned to him. He forced a smile, consciously keeping his voice soft and slightly higher.
Nice to meet you all,
he managed. Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly, but then he smiled and extended his hand.
Annie, huh?
Nice to meet you. I'm Marcus.
The others introduced themselves, and Sean carefully shook each hand, mindful of Maddie's warning about grip strength. The moment stretched uncomfortably until Reed broke the silence.
Can I get you ladies a drink?
Vodka soda for me, Maddie replied.
Same,
Sean added quickly. As Reed moved toward the bar, Marcus leaned closer.
So, Annie, how do you know Maddie? Economics class, Sean replied, the rehearsed story flowing more easily than expected. We suffered through microeconomics together last semester.
Bonded over supply and demand curves, Maddie added smoothly.
Most boring class ever.
The conversation continued, and Sean gradually relaxed as it became clear that none of his friends recognized him. They were treating him exactly as they would any other woman at the party, with that particular blend of interest and performative charm they reserved for potential romantic conquests. When Reed returned with the drinks, his hand lingered a moment too long as he passed Sean his glass.
So, Annie, you seeing anyone?
Sean nearly choked on his first sip.
No, not at the moment.
Their loss, Reed replied with a grin that Sean had seen directed at countless women before, but never at him. The entire interaction was surreal. These were his friends, guys he'd known for years, and they were flirting with him without the slightest indication they knew who he really was. Part of him wanted to laugh at the absurdity, while another part felt an unexpected thrill at successfully pulling off the deception. "Annie and I are going to mingle," Maddie announced, rescuing Sean from the increasingly awkward conversation. "See you boys later." As they moved away, Sean let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "They had no idea." "Told you," Maddie said smugly. "Although Reed seemed particularly taken with you. Should I be concerned about my brother's taste in friends?"
"Very funny,"
Sean muttered, sipping his drink carefully to avoid smudging his lipstick. "Now what? Now we enjoy the party. Mingle, dance, act normal." "Normal for who? I've never been to a party as a woman before." "Just follow my lead," Maddie advised. "And remember, small sips. Don't get drunk. You need your wits about you." The next hour passed in a blur of introductions, conversations, and careful navigation of social dynamics Sean had never noticed before. He observed how differently people interacted with him in this new identity. The sustained eye contact from men, the immediate assessment from women, the way everyone seemed to speak to him just a little bit louder than necessary.
"Is it always like this?"
he whispered to Maddie as they briefly stepped aside to regroup. "Like what?" "People looking at me like that?" Maddie laughed. "Welcome to being a woman at a party, and you're getting the tame version because you're with me." As the night progressed, Sean grew more comfortable in his role. He found himself adopting mannerisms he'd observed in Maddie and other women without consciously thinking about it, tucking hair behind his ear, angling his body slightly when engaged in conversation, laughing with his hand partially covering his mouth. The party had been underway for about 2 hours when Maddie was pulled away by some friends from her program, leaving Sean momentarily alone. He considered seeking her out, but decided against it. He was doing fine on his own, and proving he could navigate the party independently felt like another challenge to overcome. He made his way to the drink table to refill his water. Alcohol was too risky at this point, when a voice spoke from behind him.
"Not much of a drinker?"
Sean turned to find himself face to face with a tall stranger with dark hair and an easy smile. He wore a simple button-down shirt in navy blue and dark jeans. Not a costume, but he carried himself with the confidence of someone who didn't need one.
"Pacing myself,"
Sean replied, cursing the strange flutter in his stomach.
"Long night ahead."
"Smart," the stranger said, offering his hand.
"I'm Daniel, by the way." "Annie,"
Sean replied, shaking his hand briefly.
"So, Annie, what brings you to this particular gathering of masked revelers?"
Daniel asked, leaning casually against the table.
"Friend of a friend,"
Sean said, sticking to his cover story.
"You?" "Roommate dragged me along. Said I needed to get out more. His words, not mine."
There was something about Daniel's direct gaze that made Sean unusually self-conscious. Not in the fearful way he'd felt earlier, worried about being discovered, but in a new, unfamiliar way he couldn't quite identify.
Are you a student? Sean asked, desperate to maintain normal conversation. Graduate program in architecture, Daniel replied. You? Business major, senior year. Ah, so you're practically done. Any plans for after graduation? The conversation flowed with surprising ease. Daniel was thoughtful and attentive, asking follow-up questions that showed he was actually listening to Sean's answers. It wasn't at all like the surface-level party chatter Sean was accustomed to, where each person was simply waiting for their turn to speak. What started as a brief exchange stretched into nearly an hour of conversation, moving from the crowded drink table to a slightly quieter corner of the living room. They discovered shared interests in obscure indie films and hiking trails outside the city that Sean hadn't mentioned to anyone in ages.
Want to step outside?
Daniel eventually suggested, gesturing toward the back door. It's getting a bit loud in here. Warning bells sounded in Sean's head. Going somewhere more private increased the risk of discovery, but the rational part of his brain reminded him that Daniel hadn't shown the slightest suspicion about his identity. Plus, his feet were killing him in these shoes.
Sure,
he agreed.
Some fresh air would be nice.
The backyard was less crowded, with small groups scattered across the lawn and porch. They found an empty spot on the steps leading down to the garden, where the music was muffled enough to allow conversation without shouting.
Much better,
Daniel sighed, looking up at the clear night sky.
I've never been good with crowds. Then why come to a party like this?
Sean asked.
Daniel shrugged. Sometimes you need to step outside your comfort zone, right? Do things that scare you a little.
The irony of the statement wasn't lost on Sean, who was currently way beyond his comfort zone.
I guess we're both being brave tonight. You don't strike me as someone who's easily intimidated,
Daniel observed.
Appearances can be deceiving,
Sean replied, immediately regretting the comment that hit too close to his actual situation. But Daniel just nodded thoughtfully.
True. Most people are more complex than they appear at first glance.
They fell into comfortable silence for a moment, the distant sounds of the party washing over them. Sean was acutely aware of how close they were sitting, their shoulders nearly touching on the narrow step.
You're different,
Daniel said suddenly. Sean's heart rate spiked. What do you mean?
From most people here,
Daniel clarified.
You're actually interesting to talk to, not just making small talk or trying to impress anyone.
Relief washed over Sean, followed by an unexpected warmth at the compliment.
Thanks. You're pretty easy to talk to yourself.
Daniel smiled, then glanced at his watch.
I should probably find my roommate before he thinks I've abandoned him.
He hesitated, then added,
Would it be too forward to ask for your number? Maybe we could continue this conversation another time. Maybe over coffee?
Sean froze. This wasn't part of the plan. The bet was to make it through one night without being discovered. Nothing about maintaining the charade beyond the party. But looking at Daniel's genuine expression, he found himself reluctant to end their connection with a lie.
Sean fumbled for words. Too forward.
Daniel nodded, misinterpreting his hesitation.
Sorry about that. No, it's not that,
Sean quickly assured him.
It's just complicated.
Daniel's expression softened.
Life usually is. No pressure, really.
Before Sean could respond, a commotion from inside drew their attention. Someone had apparently knocked over an elaborate Halloween display, and laughter mixed with shouts of mock outrage.
I should check on my sister,
Sean said, seizing the opportunity to escape the increasingly complex situation.
Of course,
Daniel agreed,
standing and offering his hand to help Sean up. The simple gesture, something Sean had never experienced from the male perspective, sent an odd shiver through him. He accepted the help, carefully rising without toppling in his heels.
It was really nice meeting you, Annie,
Daniel said, still holding his hand a moment longer than necessary.
You too,
Sean replied, surprised by how much he meant it. As they made their way back inside, Sean caught sight of Maddie searching the crowd, a concerned expression on her face. When she spotted him, relief washed over her features. "There you are," she exclaimed, hurrying over. "I've been looking everywhere."
"Sorry, just getting some air,"
Sean explained, gesturing vaguely toward Daniel, who smiled and nodded before disappearing into the crowd. Maddie raised an eyebrow.
"Making friends?"
"Just talking," Sean deflected.
"What's up?"
"Your buddies are getting suspicious about why Sean hasn't shown up yet. They're texting him. You asking where you are." Sean pulled his phone from the small purse Maddie had insisted he carry. Sure enough, there were several increasingly annoyed messages from his friends. "What should I do?" "Text them that you're sick and can't make it," Maddie advised. "Then we can stay another hour to solidify your win and get out of here." Sean quickly composed the message, claiming food poisoning had him trapped in the bathroom. The replies were immediate, a mixture of sympathy and taunting about losing the bet.
"Done,"
he said, tucking the phone away. "Now we just need to avoid them for a bit longer." They circulated through the party, careful to steer clear of Sean's friends while maintaining the appearance of normal partygoers. Sean found himself scanning the room occasionally, hoping for another glimpse of Daniel, but he seemed to have disappeared. About 40 minutes later, Sean felt a tap on his shoulder. Turning, he found himself face to face with Marcus, whose gaze was slightly unfocused from alcohol.
"Annie, right?"
Marcus slurred slightly.
"Maddie's friend?"
Sean nodded, keeping his expression neutral while his heart thundered in his chest.
"Have you seen Sean tonight? Maddie's brother?" "No,"
Sean replied carefully.
"I don't think I've met him."
Marcus frowned.
"Shame. He was supposed to be here. Would have introduced you."
He leaned in conspiratorially.
"He could use someone like you. Been single too long. Getting weird."
Sean fought the urge to roll his eyes.
"Is that so?"
"Totally,"
Marcus insisted.
"Good guy, though. Just, you know." "I'm sure,"
Sean replied dryly. Marcus studied his face for an uncomfortably long moment.
"You know, you remind me of someone."
Sean's stomach dropped. "I have one of those faces, I guess." Before Marcus could pursue the thought further, Maddie appeared at Sean's side. "Annie, there you are! We need to go. Emergency study session tomorrow morning, remember?"
"Right,"
Sean agreed quickly.
"Sorry, Marcus, duty calls."
Marcus waved them off, already distracted by someone offering him another drink. Sean exhaled slowly as they made their way toward the door.
"That was close,"
he muttered. "But he didn't figure it out," Maddie pointed out. "None of them did. You won, fair and square." As they retrieved their coats, Sean felt a light touch on his arm. Turning, he found Daniel standing there, a piece of paper in his hand.
"I know you said it's complicated," he said quietly, "but if you ever want to talk more—"
He held out the paper with his number scrawled on it. Sean hesitated, then accepted it with a small smile.
"Thanks."
Daniel nodded, then disappeared back into the party without another word. "Who was that?" Maddie asked, as they stepped outside into the cool night air. Sean tucked the paper into his purse.
Just someone I met.
Maddie gave him a curious look, but didn't press the issue. They walked to her car in silence, the sounds of the party fading behind them. Once safely inside with the doors closed, Sean let out a long, shaky breath.
I can't believe I pulled that off.
I told you my makeover skills were exceptional, Maddie said, starting the car. Though I have to say, you were a surprisingly quick study. What do you mean? Most guys would have been awkward as hell trying to pass as a woman, even with my help. But after the first hour, you seemed comfortable, natural, even. Sean frowned, staring out the window as they pulled away from the curb.
I was just trying to win the bet.
Maddie hummed non-committally. And that guy who gave you his number? Was he part of winning the bet too? Heat crept up Sean's neck. That was nothing, just being polite. Sure, Maddie said, her tone making it clear she didn't believe him. Look, I'm not judging. I'm just observing that you seem to be enjoying yourself more than strictly necessary for a bet. What are you implying? Maddie shrugged. Nothing, just that maybe this little experiment revealed something you hadn't considered before.
That's ridiculous,
Sean protested, but his voice lacked conviction.
It was just one night. A joke.
If you say so, Maddie replied, turning her attention back to the road. The rest of the drive passed in silence, Sean lost in thought as the city lights streamed past. When they arrived at Maddie's apartment, he followed her inside, suddenly exhausted from the mental and emotional strain of the evening. You can shower and change in the bathroom, Maddie offered. I left makeup remover on the counter. Sean nodded gratefully and headed for the bathroom. Standing before the mirror, he studied his reflection. The careful makeup, the brown wig, the unfamiliar yet not entirely uncomfortable outfit. For one brief moment, he allowed himself to acknowledge that the person looking back at him didn't feel as foreign as he'd expected. Then, he reached for the makeup remover and began the process of returning to himself. Monday morning, Sean walked into his economics lecture to find his friends already gathered in their usual seats. As he approached, they broke into exaggerated coughing fits. "Look who recovered from his convenient food poisoning," Reed called out. Sean slid into his seat with a confident grin. "Laugh all you want, I win." Marcus shook his head.
You can't win if you didn't show up.
"Oh, but I did," Sean countered, pulling out his phone. He scrolled to a selfie Maddie had sneakily taken of them at the party, showing Sean in full Annie mode, standing next to a clearly clueless Marcus.
I believe this constitutes proof of payment.
His friends crowded around the phone, expressions shifting from disbelief to shock to reluctant admiration.
No fucking way,
Damon breathed.
That was you? In the red dress?
The one and only, Sean confirmed, enjoying their stunned reactions. But I talked to you, Marcus spluttered.
How did I not recognize you?
Because my sister is a wizard with makeup, and none of you were paying attention to my face anyway,
Sean replied dryly. Justin shook his head in amazement.
I gotta say, dude, you made a surprisingly not terrible-looking woman.
Gee, thanks.
Sean deadpanned.
Pay up, gentlemen,
Reed sighed, reaching for his wallet. In a single moment, the essence of Sean's character transformed. What initially began as a playful challenge had catalyzed a silent epiphany. As he went about his day, Each step was accompanied by a newfound appreciation for the complexities of self-identity. Unbeknownst to his classmates, Sean had evolved, relishing in the secret knowledge that he had challenged societal norms and emerged victorious. The simple bet laid bare Sean's ability to embrace various personas, shattering preconceived notions of who he was. This revelation served as a reminder that self-discovery often lies just beyond our comfort zones. Sean's day-to-day interactions remained unchanged, but his internal landscape had been irrevocably altered.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!